Hi, my name is Sharon Moore. I'm the technical leader in IBM in the UK for digital engagement. And that's really about providing engaging experiences by marrying the right technology with people, two of my favourite subjects. Now, one of my jobs is to enable IBM's clients to use social and commerce technologies to make the most of people, whether employees, consumers, or citizens. But despite my passion for social, when I first moved into this role a while ago, I realised I had a tough road ahead of me. You see, a number of people just didn't really get social, and many seemed to equate it with just Twitter and couldn't quite see the value. So I spent some time talking about the breadth of social, of the benefits of open collaboration with colleagues, of the value of being smarter about recruiting, leading and engaging a workforce, and of providing captivating digital experiences on web and mobile that make it easy for consumers to buy with confidence and then to come back to. It wasn't just about Twitter. And then, of course, IBM announced the partnership with Twitter, and I tell you, I got a little scared that people would forget everything else. But fortunately, they haven't, and they do remember the breadth of social business. But there is really good news about the partnership, and that is that lots of people, not just IBMers, are beginning to understand the value of social media data to the enterprise, whether that enterprise has 400,000 employees or 40 employees. It really does represent the pulse of the planet, and it can inform many of the decisions businesses make. I forget who it was that equated social networks to the largest focus group, but they are right. No longer are we restricted to the opinions of a small number of people. We've all seen those adverts that say 90% of testers said they saw remarkable improvements. But if you read the small print, then you find out there's only 40 testers, so hardly representative. And Twitter is a fantastic source, but it's not the only one. There are so many sources out there that detail people's opinions and experience. In fact, IBM has just announced a partnership with Facebook too. But there are some that existed before Facebook and Twitter. And when I spoke with the marketing people at a large bank who said they don't really look at the money-saving expert forums, and I had to pick myself up off the floor because there's such a wealth of information about what consumers are saying and actually the advice that they are giving one another. Of course, there are some who think that social networking is a fad, it's just a current thing for the young folks, it will die out, something new will come along. And I think it will evolve. I don't think it's going away. And one of the things that's been on my mind about was why has social stuck with us? What is it that's made it so successful? And I started to think about some of the psychology studies, and there's one that I have a little bit of knowledge of, but it's very little, and that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The lowest level of need is physiological, and even I, as a fan of social, am willing to concede that social networking is not air, water, food, and neither is it sleep. But if you go higher in the hierarchy, social networking can assist in fulfilling some of the other needs. Perhaps it does contribute to our need for love and belonging by allowing us to easily make contact with others who are like us, especially if we are not physically with people who are like us. And then moving up the needs, it could possibly be a source of esteem to make us feel we're contributing and being respected, especially in a blogging or forums world where you're sharing your opinions. But enough of my ponderings and amateur psychology. Harvard actually has empirical results, not just suppositions, that demonstrate we just like sharing information about ourselves. In fact, being present in social networks but not contributing in itself can also tell us about individuals. Let me give you some more statistics about just how important social is to us. So, 74% of online adults use social networking sites. 74% of consumers rely on social media to influence their purchasing decisions. Every minute, Tumblr owners publish approximately 27,778 new blog posts. Mothers with children under the age of 5 are the most active on social media. A rather sad one in 5 divorces involves social media. And also a shocking one, 53% of millennials would rather lose their sense of smell than their technology. I wonder if they'd think the same if they really did lose their sense of smell. But anyway, it's not going away. We like sharing. So, how can business take advantage? Well, for someone who works in a marketing role or has customer relationship responsibilities, it's a really hard task to keep on top of all the different social media networks, choosing which to interact in. And for some of those, their aim is to have as many followers as possible. But the value of social is so much more than just followers. After all, what about all that's being said by people that are not your followers? I'd argue that we have to use as much of the data as possible. So what I'd like to do is share some examples with you of where people have really been able to get value from data. The first is in an industry close to my heart, and I have to forgive me for my Italian pronunciation because it's not very good, but Amici di Via della Spiga is a company that owns a number of popular designer brands. When they analysed a year's worth of social media data, we discovered a few key concepts that was influencing brand perceptions and also decisions about purchasing. So, for example, one of their brands with products that had an environmental sustainability in their theme, they saw a 60% increase in their brand reputation and increased sales. The study that we did also revealed more traditional promotional methods like events and celebrity endorsements. They are valuable to brand perception, but don't necessarily drive revenue at all. The study also identified common characteristics in the followers of certain brands, outlining personal traits that contribute to a preference for one brand over another, and it also identified the most influential sources of fashion news and opinions online. Now, with this insight, the brands could then target specific demographics, reevaluate the allocation of their time and money in a way that resonates with customers. Now, for those with much more of an interest in smarter cities, the city of Toulouse created an app to gather feedback from visitors about their cities, but they also recognised that not everyone was going to use it, and actually insight from locals is also very valuable. So they analysed social media data for more candid opinions, and they discovered there are problems to fix, such as urban planning and policy decisions. But the one that really sticks with me is that they were able to reduce their reaction to road maintenance issues, I think that's potholes to you and me, from 15 days to 1 day. I'm not sure they fixed the issues with 1 day. They may have, but just accelerating the reaction to them and therefore the reaction to the citizens was quite a coup. Now, for something a bit different, Wimbledon is a really interesting use case because the All England Tennis Club make their money from TV and radio networks who pay to broadcast the Wimbledon tournament. So brand perception really does bring money to them. So this year, or rather 2014, the year just passed, the internal digital team used social media data to drive the digital content. So they could react to what was being said pretty much in real time and change what they were publishing on the web to the apps and to social media too. And that's not something you can do really just by reading all the tweets about Wimbledon. You do need technology that can identify the relevant tweets. After all, Wimbledon is not just a tennis ground, but it's a station, it's an area of London, and it's even the home of the Wombles. You know, you need technology that can rapidly get true insight, not just guesses from a person skimming through Twitter. So take, for example, the 3rd of July, sentiment about tennis dipped negatively because Sharapova said something about Tendulkar. I have no idea what it was that was said. And although sentiment about Wimbledon itself was still positive, the digital team took the decision to dig down into what was being said and then amend the topics to keep the focus on tennis. But by understanding not just sentiment, but the engagement of people, their authority, their timelines, Wimbledon could target messages at certain individuals. An example of why this is important is that the ground at Wimbledon is a finite space. We know that for some, the queue is great fun, and we Brits tend to be very good at it. But for Wimbledon, there really is no point in people joining when the tennis club just knows that they will not get in. So by ensuring they target their tweets at the people who are not just influencers, but people who are timely responders, they could ensure people stop coming to the ground purely to queue, which means they improve customer satisfaction, people haven't spent money on travel, there's less of a worry from security, and so on. In a similar scenario regarding influencers, the Financial Times ran an analysis of the attendees of the World Economic Forum in Davos. They were able to group them according to certain demographics and also who their influencers were, such as Bill Gates and Arianna Huffington. Drilling down into that kind of information, perhaps in slightly different scenarios, can provide information on which networks you need to pay attention to, who the right investors are, and so on. We're also working with some water agencies to detect problems. Now, if you're anything like me, if you spot a problem, something that needs repaired, perhaps a pothole from a previous conversation, you'll probably assume that someone else has reported it. But because there are a lot of people like me, these things are often not reported, even when they're as visible as a water main burst. So the longer something goes unreported, the greater the cost to the company. And the thing is, we may not report it, but we are perfectly happy to complain about it. And in a way, that can actually be as good as reporting it. Because if you're listening to social media, you're going to be able to discover the operational problems. Now, this last example getting me talking for hours. With just 200 tweets, it is possible to drive down to understand a person's personality, their values and needs using psycholinguistic analysis. It is both brilliant and, well, terrifying. Finally, we have a technology that makes it truly possible to hyper-personalize. Earlier in the fashion example, I talked about better identification of demographics for more accurate segmentation. You can sell better, more accurately. But this really does allow us to get to the segment of one. It's not just a cliche anymore. It can be reality. So if a company wants to market to an individual, they can treat that person truly as an individual, using what they value and their characteristics to pick the most relevant product and service, and even using the language style that will most appeal. Incidentally, what's on this chart is analysis of me. I'm more emotional than I'd like, need to control my frustrations a little better sometimes, although I think that perhaps some self-consciousness can be a good thing. My management may perhaps worry. I score highly on authority challenging, but they can also be consoled by the fact I'm pretty cooperative too. As for values, self-enhancement, that's bettering myself, and prestige, it seemed to be high, as is self-transcendence. I find it interesting when I ran this analysis on the Twitter streams of a few retailers, when each of their results came as 100% for self-transcendence. If ever there is someone that should care about others, it's a company helpline. It is really easy to get hold of social data, and there are several ways to link social media IDs with the IDs of customers. Sadly, I learned of some companies that are using their access to social media account information just to identify their customers' contacts and then send all those contacts marketing emails to. And that made me really sad. I even blogged about it. Because essentially that's what email viruses do. They get hold of your contacts and then they spread themselves on. Don't be a virus. Be personal. Be personalized. So for call centers, we need to change the KPIs. Don't just measure the length of the call, because maybe the value that a customer brings isn't just rewarded properly in brevity. We really should react to personality. So if you have someone on the phone who's outgoing and gregarious, perhaps spend some time asking how they are. With someone who is not like that, well, maybe you just want to get on with the task in hand because they're less interested. If a call center person has somebody who's genuinely uncooperative on the other end of the line, they're going to have a really, really strong business case for selling to them. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful, and so on. So maybe call centers need to modify scripts, or we need to change standard emails to cater for this kind of personalization. But if a company that hasn't got that flexibility because of its existing technology, we'll just give staff the information, because sometimes being forewarned is forearmed. So if a company's employees know the character on the end of the phone, they can probably be better prepared, especially in a world where we as customers, we want the relationship people had with bank managers in the past. But chances are, if we're speaking to someone on the phone, that someone in that company will speak to for the first and only time. In a retail scenario, again, selling, if you think about people who seek self-enhancement, perhaps a company should market their products or services that align with the values of self-enhancement that matter to that person. Incidentally, if you want to play with this, it's really easy. You can do it by using a service available in IBM's Bluemix. But like I said, equally terrifying and fascinating. And we can go more simple than personality. We can find out just about major and not so major life events. So events that influence decisions about cars and pensions and mortgages. Incidentally, if you can derive that someone is not a risk taker based on personality, then you may offer them a fixed rate, not a tracker. Of course, we do need to be careful about creep factor. If you're on the phone with a customer, you are likely to choose not to say, because of our personality analysis, we've concluded you're neurotic. Ever so slightly freaky, you're not going to want that. But it could be a wise thing to indicate that you have used social media. So, for example, because you shared your Facebook profile with us, we think you really like Baroque classical music, and so we'd like to make an offer on tickets for this upcoming concert. So being open is a lot less stalkerish, but looks like you've paid attention. And we could have a whole other conversation on security and privacy and stalking, and then being stalkers. Let me just come back to the business models for now. So as you've seen, In the examples, social media data can clearly influence sales and marketing. It can allow for more personal and more personalized campaigns. It can allow for more relevant campaigns. You'll get instant feedback on adverts to allow you to more accurately judge if they're successful, of course, depending on how you measure success. It can allow you to better segment customers. I'd like that a lot. I believe that marketing is inevitable, and if I'm going to be marketed to, I'd much prefer that it is truly relevant to me, not just a good guess. The chances are that guess really isn't that good. Behind the scenes, thinking about innovation and product development, social media can even influence that. You see, ideas don't need to come from within the company. Social networks can be a source of completely new product ideas, but also a source of ideas about change. Remember I talked about how large your focus group it is? You can discover what's good about what you sell, what resonates with people, what you think will be great but is largely received badly, how to change, and what's needed. If you think about supply chain, we can start to question if investments are being made in the right partners and suppliers. Social media data is even useful in recruitment. If you're looking for a professional hire, I'd suggest that stupid photos of someone when they are 16 really should be disregarded. Many of us do silly things at that age in one way or another, and we can mature a lot between 16 and 21. But we could perhaps use social media data to understand what people consider our reputation and brand to be. Do they want to work for us? What is it about our competitors that makes them want to work there instead? And going back to that photo of the 16-year-old, well, maybe if you're looking to recruit them at that age because, they want to stock shelves, it's a summer job, something like that, maybe it's worth having a check of their personality, because if you can determine that they are dependable and loyal, then they may still be worth hiring, even if they like a party every now and again. We can also start to think about the personalities and values that closely match to your organization. Sure, we don't want a bunch of automatons. I am a bit of an evangelist when it comes to diversity, and we know innovation is much more likely with diverse organizations. But sharing values also does correlate to success. Company operations, they can be impacted by use of social media data. I've already referred to a local authority and water company examples that show an increase in public perception and also show how we can reduce wastage, including financial wastage, and possibly also impact the environment around us just by listening externally to social media. In a retail scenario, well, based on social media data, we can start to build predictive models that allow us to improve sales forecasting, to optimize our buying, our allocation, our distribution, and our pricing. We can get the right products locally, and therefore we'll increase our sales, we'll reduce our markdown, improve our margins, and even increase customer happiness. It even applies to mergers and acquisitions. Do we have the right information before we sell a business or buy a business? What will be the impact on public perception? What will be the ultimate financial impact that way? Thinking more about finance, there are banks now that are using social media data to more accurately measure risk. And we are starting to think about how social media data can feature in the algorithms and equations used by analysts in investments. I'm not sure if the possibilities are endless, but there are certainly plenty of them. Social media data really can help us change our businesses. Now, I'd like to come back to those who are still not sure about social networking. It's been seen to be the realm of the millennials, the generation who has only recently started working for us, although we may already be working for them. But I really think millennial is more a state of mind. It's an attitude, not an age group. It's not just millennials who use this type of technology. According to a recent IBM Institute of Business Value study, 12% of consumers fall into a category called trailblazers. They are in the 30 to 50 age bracket. The average is 38. And then there's the tech intrigued. They make up 29% of consumers. This time their average age is 42. None of those ages are what we think of as traditionally millennial. But they make up 41% of people who are experimenting with technology to interact and to make purchasing decisions. My gran is 92 and she uses Facebook because it's a great way to keep in touch with the family when you can't get out. It's not just the realm of the millennials. So there are lots of opportunities. If you had social media data, what would you do differently? If it was me, personalization. That's my goal. Thanks very much for your time. Feel free to get in touch.